respected. The moment you stop chasing him is the moment he finally starts to feel your absence. And I'm not talking about playing games. I'm talking about becoming so grounded in your own worth that his silence no longer controls your heartbeat. Because when a man realizes he can't reach you the way he used to, that's when regret begins to whisper his name back to him. Now listen carefully, because this is not about revenge. This is not about manipulation. This is about power, real power. Kind that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, and doesn't break when someone walks away. Too many people think the way to win someone back is by holding on tighter, calling more, texting longer, explaining deeper. But let me tell you something. When you try to convince someone to stay, you're already losing yourself in the process. There comes a moment in every relationship where the balance shifts. One person starts giving more, loving more, trying more, not because they're evil, not because they don't care at all, but because human nature responds to what it doesn't have to fight for. When you're always there, always available, always forgiving, you become predictable. And predictable gets taken for granted. But the moment you step back, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, everything changes. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a man who used to hear your voice every morning, used to feel your presence every night, used to know that no matter what he did, you would still be there. Then one day, you're not. No long emotional messages, no checking in, no chasing explanations, just silence. Not cold silence, but peaceful silence. The kind that says, I choose me now. At first, he won't react the way you expect. He might even enjoy the space. He might think, good, finally some peace. And that's when most people panic. They break. They reach out too soon. They ruin the very shift that was beginning to take place. Because what you don't see is what's happening beneath the surface. Silence has a delayed impact. It doesn't hit immediately. It creeps in slowly. One day he notices you didn't text. The next day he realizes you didn't watch his stories. A week later, he starts wondering who you're talking to instead. And that's when curiosity turns into concern. See, when you were always available, he never had to imagine life without you. Now you forced him to experience it. And here's the truth most people don't want to. Except people value what they fear losing, not what they feel guaranteed to have. So when you remove yourself, not dramatically, not loudly, but gracefully, you create a space where he has to confront something uncomfortable. Your absence, and absence when done right, is louder than any argument you could ever have. But let me be clear about something. This only works if it's real. You can't fake detachment. You can't pretend to move on while secretly checking your phone every 5 minutes, hoping he texts. Energy doesn't lie. People feel it. If you're still emotionally tied to his every move, he will sense that, even from a distance. This is where most people get it wrong. They think ignoring him is the strategy. No, evolving beyond him is the strategy. Because when you truly start focusing on yourself, something powerful happens. Your energy shifts. Your confidence rises. You start laughing again without needing his validation. You start enjoying your life without waiting for his attention. And suddenly, you're no longer the same person he left. And that's what makes him come back. Not your silence, but your transformation. Because now, when he thinks about you, he doesn't just remember who you were. He starts wondering who you've become. And curiosity is a powerful force. Let me tell you something from real life. There are people who spent months chasing someone who barely gave them the time of day. But the moment they stopped, the moment they pulled their energy back, suddenly that same person started reaching out. Not because they magically changed overnight, but because they felt the shift. You see, when someone feels like they've lost access to you, it challenges their ego. It makes them question their place in your life. And when that question doesn't have an easy answer anymore, that's when regret begins. But listen, this is the most important part. You don't do this to make him come back. You do this to become someone who no longer needs him to. Because here's the reality. Sometimes he will come back and sometimes he won't. And if your entire strategy is built on getting him back, then you're still giving him control over your happiness. This isn't about him. This is about you reclaiming your power. It's about waking up one day and realizing that your worth was never tied to how someone treated you. It's about understanding that the love you were trying so hard to give him, you deserve to give to yourself first. And when you reach that point, something incredible happens. Even if he comes back, you're no longer the same person who was willing to accept less than you deserve. Because now you've tasted what it feels like to choose yourself. And once you taste that, you don't go back. So if you're sitting there right now wondering if you should text him, if you should explain yourself one more time, if you should try to fix what he broke, ask yourself this. If he truly valued you, would you even be in this position? Sometimes. The strongest message you can send is no message at all. Not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Because when you stop trying to be seen by someone who overlooks you, you stop becoming visible to yourself again. And that is where everything begins to change. Now, let me take you deeper into this because there's a difference between being silent and being truly unavailable. And if you don't understand that difference, you'll keep repeating the same cycle over and over again. There's a quiet truth most people never learn until it's too late. Being silent is easy, but becoming unavailable, that takes strength, real strength. Because silence can still be filled with hope, with waiting, with emotional attachment. But true unavailability, that comes from a shift deep inside you, where you no longer revolve your world around someone who treated you like an option. See, a lot of people think they're pulling away, but in reality, they're just pausing. They stop texting, but they keep checking his last scene. They stop calling, but they replay old conversations in their mind. They try to act strong on the outside, but inside, they're still hoping he notices, still hoping he reaches out, still hoping he chooses them. And that kind of energy, it leaks. You don't have to say a word for someone to feel that you're still emotionally available to them. That's why some men don't come back, because even in your silence, they still feel like they have access to you. They know deep down, if I come back, she'll be there. And when a man feels guaranteed access, there's no urgency, no fear, no reason to reflect on what he lost. But when you truly become unavailable, everything shifts. Unavailability is not about blocking him in anger. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about reaching a point where your life becomes so full, so focused, so aligned with your own growth that he is no longer the center of your emotional universe. You're not waiting anymore, not wondering anymore. You're not chasing closure anymore. You've already given it to yourself. And when that happens, something powerful takes place inside him, because now, for the first time, he feels what you felt. Uncertainty. He starts questioning, why hasn't she reached out? Why doesn't she react anymore? Why does it feel like she's moved on? And let me tell you something, a man can ignore your presence, but he cannot ignore your absence when it's real. There's a story I want you to feel, not just hear. There was a woman who gave everything to a man who kept her halfway in his life. Not fully committed, not fully gone, just enough attention to keep her holding on. She waited, she understood, she forgave over and over again. Until one day, she did it. No big announcement, no dramatic goodbye. She just stopped explaining, stopped chasing, stopped trying to prove her worth to someone who had already seen it and still chose not to value it. At first, he didn't notice. Then weeks, but slowly, her absence started to echo. The good morning text he took for granted, gone. The emotional support he leaned on, gone. The unconditional understanding he never appreciated, gone. And that's when it hit him. Not all at once, but in moments when something good happened and he had no one to share it with the way he used to. When something bad happened and he realized the one person who would have been there wasn't anymore. That's when regret begins to grow roots. Because regret doesn't come from losing something ordinary. It comes from losing something rare, something genuine, something that doesn't come around twice. But here's where it gets deeper. When he finally reaches out, and he will, in many cases, it won't be the same. Because now he's not dealing with the version of you who was willing to wait. He's facing a version of you who has learned, a version of you who understands her worth, a version of you who doesn't just accept words, but watches actions. And that's where the real power lies. Because now the roles have shifted. He's the one trying to explain. He's the one trying to reconnect. He's the one trying to regain access to something he once had without effort. But here's the danger, and you need to hear this clearly. Just because he comes back doesn't mean he's changed. Sometimes people return out of loneliness, not growth. Sometimes they miss the comfort you gave them, not the responsibility of loving you the right way. And if you're not careful, you'll open the door to the same pain, just in a different form. That's why your transformation matters more than his return. Because if you've truly grown, you won't be easily convinced by temporary emotions. You'll ask yourself the questions you avoided before. Has he changed, or is he just back? Does he value me? Does he just miss having me? Is this love, or is this familiarity? And those questions, they protect you. Because the goal was never just to make him feel erased. The goal was to stop abandoning yourself. Let me say that again, because it's powerful. The real reason you need to step back is not to make him chase you. It's to stop chasing someone who made you forget your own value. Because when you forget who you are, you start accepting things that don't align with you. You start settling for less communication, less effort, less respect, and calling it love. But love, real love, doesn't make you feel uncertain about your place in someone's life. And the moment you understand that, you stop negotiating your worth. Now imagine this version of you. You wake up and your mood is no longer tied to whether he texted you. You go through your day, focused, peaceful, present, not distracted by overthinking. You laugh genuinely, not forcing a smile to hide the pain. You start building a life that doesn't revolve around waiting for someone else to choose you. That version of you is magnetic, not because you're trying to attract him, but because you've stopped needing to. And when a man sees that, when he feels that, it does something to him. Because now he realizes you're not the same person he could ignore. You've become someone he has to earn. And that changes everything. But here's the truth most people won't tell you. Not every man will come back. And that's not a loss. That's clarity. Because anyone who can walk away from your value and never look back was never meant to stay in your life long term. Your job is not to convince someone to love you. Your job is to recognize when they don't and have the strength to walk away. Because sometimes the greatest form of power is letting go without needing an explanation. And when you do that, when you truly let go, you don't just make him feel your absence. You rediscover your presence. And that's worth more than any apology he could ever bring back. Now, there's one more layer to this, something deeper, something most people overlook, the way you rebuild. Yourself after walking away determines whether you repeat the same cycle or finally break free from it. And if you understand this next part, you won't just change this situation, you'll change your entire life. The moment you walk away is not the victory, it's the beginning of a new responsibility. Because now you're alone with yourself. No distractions, no emotional noise from him, no constant cycle of hope and disappointment. Just you and the truth of who you've been, what you've tolerated, and what you need to become. This is where most people either grow or go back, because it's easy to miss someone who once felt like home. It's easy to romanticize the memories, to replay the good moments, to convince yourself that maybe it wasn't that bad, maybe you overreacted, maybe you should give it one more try. And that one more try has kept more people stuck than anything else. Growth requires honesty. Not the kind where you blame him for everything, but the kind where you look at yourself and ask, why did I stay so long? Why did I accept so little when I had so much to give? Why did I need his validation to feel worthy? Those questions are uncomfortable, but they are necessary. Because if you don't understand your patterns, you will repeat them. Maybe with him again, maybe with someone new. But the story will stay the same, just the face will change. So this phase, this quiet, lonely, powerful phase is where you rebuild. Not for him, for you. You start reconnecting with parts of yourself you ignored while trying to keep someone else. Your passions, your peace, your confidence. The things that made you feel alive before you started shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's comfort zone. You begin to realize something important. You didn't lose him. You lost yourself trying to keep him. And now you're getting yourself back. There's a shift that happens when you truly start healing. You stop looking for closure from the person who hurt you and you start creating closure within yourself. You stop needing answers like, why did he do this? And start accepting the only answer that matters. He did it because he could, and I allowed it. That's not about blaming yourself. That's about taking your power back. Because when you recognize your role, you gain control over your future. And from that place, you start setting standards. Not based on fear of losing someone, but based on respect for yourself. You begin to say things like, I don't chase. Inconsistent energy. I don't stay where I'm not valued. I don't beg for clarity when my confusion is already the answer. And those standards, they don't push the right people away. They filter out the wrong ones. Now let's talk about something real. There will be moments late at night, quiet afternoons, random memories where you'll feel the urge to reach out. Not because you've forgotten everything, but because you remember the feeling. And feelings can be deceiving. They don't always. Tell the truth about what's right for you. They just remind you of what was familiar. So in those moments, you have to pause and ask yourself, am I missing him or am I missing the version of me that existed when I thought he loved me? Because those are two very different things. One keeps you stuck. The other sets you free. As you continue to grow, something beautiful begins to happen. You stop trying to be chosen and you start choosing. You become more intentional, more aware, more grounded in what you deserve and what you will no longer tolerate. And when that shift happens, even if he comes back, you don't respond from emotion. You respond from clarity. You're no longer impressed by words. You're no longer moved by temporary attention. You're watching consistency, effort, respect, because you've learned love is not what someone says. It's what they repeatedly show you. And here's where it all comes full circle. When he comes back, and many do, he won't be meeting the same person he left behind. He'll be meeting someone who has boundaries, someone who understands silence doesn't mean weakness, it means control. Someone who knows her value doesn't decrease just because someone failed to see it. And that can be intimidating because now he can't just slide back into your life the way he left. Now he has to earn a place he once had for free. But remember this, you don't owe him access just because he's finally ready to appreciate you. Timing matters. And if he couldn't value you when you were giving your best, you have every right to question whether he deserves you now that you've become even stronger. This is not about punishing him. This is about protecting yourself. Because growth without boundaries will lead you right back to the same pain. And boundaries without self-worth will crumble the moment emotions rise. But when you have both, you become unstoppable. You become someone who doesn't fear losing people because you've already survived losing yourself and you chose to rebuild. That's power. That's transformation. That's the kind of energy that doesn't just make someone regret losing you. It makes you grateful you walked away. And in that gratitude, you find peace. Not the temporary kind that comes from someone texting you again, but the deep, unshakable kind that comes from knowing you finally chose yourself. Now, there's one final piece to this, something that ties everything together. Because understanding your power is one thing, but mastering it in real life situations, especially when emotions come rushing back, that's where everything is truly tested. And if you don't get this part right, you can lose all the progress you've made in a single moment of weakness. This is where everything gets real, not in the silence, not in the distance, but in the moment he comes back and your heart starts beating a little faster again. Because it will. You can grow, you can heal, you can become stronger, but you're still human. And when someone who once meant everything suddenly reappears, it can stir emotions you thought you had already buried. This is the test, not of him, but of you. Because now it's not about whether he regrets losing you. It's about whether you've learned enough to not lose yourself again. He might come back with apologies. He might come back with explanations. He might even come back with tears in his eyes, telling you he made a mistake, that he didn't realize your value, that he wants another chance. And for a moment, it will feel like everything you once wanted is finally happening. But listen carefully, just because something feels right doesn't mean it is right. Feelings can be powerful, but they are not always wise. This is where you pause, not out of fear, but out of clarity. You don't rush back into his arms just because he finally showed up. You don't ignore everything you went through just because he's saying the right words now. You don't trade your growth for temporary comfort. You observe, you listen, but more importantly, you watch, because people can say anything when they feel like they're losing you. But real change shows itself over time. Consistency, effort, accountability. Those are the things that matter now. Not promises, not emotions, not nostalgia. Because nostalgia is dangerous. It paints the past in a way that makes you forget the pain you had to endure. It reminds you of the laughter, the connection, the moments that felt special, but it conveniently hides the confusion, the waiting, the feeling of not being enough. And if you're not careful, you fall in love with a memory and walk right back into a reality that hasn't changed. So when he comes back, you don't ask, do I still love him? You ask, is this the kind of love I deserve now? That question changes everything, because now it's not about your emotions controlling your decisions. It's about your standards guiding them. And standards are built from experience. Every tear you cried, every moment you felt overlooked, every time you questioned your worth, those weren't just painful experiences. They were lessons. And if you ignore those lessons, you repeat the same story. But if you honor them, you evolve. Let me tell you something powerful. The strongest person in the room is not the one who can walk away. It's the one who can walk away and stay away even when the door opens again. Because staying away requires discipline. It requires self-respect. It requires you to say, I've come too far to go back to something that broke me. And that's not easy, especially when part of you still cares. But caring doesn't mean returning. Missing someone doesn't mean they belong in your life. Love by itself is not enough. It has to be the right kind of love, the kind that respects you, the kind that values you, the kind that doesn't make you question your place. So if he comes back, don't be afraid to take your time. Don't be afraid to say, I hear you, but I need to see consistency. Don't be afraid to set boundaries that protect the version of you that fought so hard to heal. Because this version of you deserves better, not just from him, but from yourself. And here's something most people don't realize. Even if you decide not to take him back, you still win. Because the goal was never just to get him to regret losing you. The goal was to become someone who no longer settles for less than she deserves. The goal was to rebuild your confidence, your peace, your identity without needing someone else to validate it. And once you've done that, you've already succeeded. Because now, whether he comes back or not, you're no longer waiting. You're no longer chasing. You're no longer losing sleep over someone who didn't lose sleep over losing you. You've stepped into a different mindset, a different energy, a different life. And in that life, you don't beg for love. You attract it naturally, effortlessly. Because when you know your worth, you stop accepting anything that doesn't match it. And that's the final shift. From chasing to choosing, from hoping to knowing, from being an option to becoming a priority first in your own life. So whatever happens next, whether he comes back full of regret or stays gone forever, you stand in your power because you've already done the hardest thing. You chose yourself when it wasn't easy. And that decision will change everything about the way you love and the way you allow yourself to be loved. Then let me leave you with something that you can carry with you, not just today, not just in this moment, but every time you feel tempted to go back to something that once broke you. Because at the end of all this, it was never really about him. It was about the moment you finally saw yourself clearly. The moment you stopped asking, why wasn't I enough? And started saying, why did I stay where I wasn't valued? That shift, that one question changes everything. You see, people will come into your life and teach you lessons in ways you never expected. Some will love you the right way. Some will love you halfway. And some will only show you what love is not. But every single one of them leaves you with a choice, to grow or to repeat. And the truth is, the pain you went through wasn't there to destroy you. It was there to wake you up, to show you that your heart is powerful, but it also needs protection, to remind you that love should never feel like something you have to earn by losing yourself. And most importantly, to push you back toward yourself. Because somewhere along the way, you forgot just how valuable you are. You forgot that your presence is a gift, not something people are entitled to. You forgot that the way you love deeply, genuinely, wholeheartedly is rare. And when something is rare, it should be protected, not given away to someone who treats it like it's replaceable. Now think about this. If he comes back and he sees a version of you that is calm, confident, no longer chasing, no longer waiting, that's when he truly feels it. Not because you made him feel erased, but because you remembered who you are. And that realization hits deeper than any silence ever could. But here's the final truth, the one that matters more than anything else. You don't need him to come back to prove your worth. You don't need his regret to validate your value. You don't need his apology to heal your heart, because everything you were looking for in him was already within you. The love, the peace, the validation, the strength. It was always there. You just gave it away to someone who didn't know how to hold it. But now you do. And once you know how to hold your own value, you become unbreakable. Not because nothing will ever hurt you again, but because you'll never abandon yourself again. So if you're listening to this right now, standing at that emotional crossroad, wondering whether to go back or to move forward, choose forward. Choose growth. Choose the version of you that refuses to settle for anything less than real, consistent, respectful love. Because the right person will never require you to disappear to be appreciated. The right person will recognize your value while you're still standing in front of them. And until that person comes into your life, be that person for yourself. Respect yourself. Choose yourself. Love yourself the way you were trying to love someone else. Because when you do that, don't just attract better, you become better. And that is the real win. So walk away with your head high, your heart strong, and your standards even stronger. Because you were never meant to chase love. You were meant to be chosen, starting by choosing yourself.